vampire.
Well, he could be. But these are.
So the carnival's like a labyrinth.
Yeah, they're kind of like teenagers. They might be included.
One thing this burly nerd look
What?
with his own real
He's
is being
not
just
the
us being.
Okay.
The carnival is free, right?
And then
And you've got.
you have to
Basically, all the rides
I
are
think
like
it's gonna be that one.
Okay.
I've noticed something.
But which one of these do you
Okay.
think we should place? Because
This looks like they're all mischievous
Teens
looking,
are
aren't they?
scheming on their
Some of them
stories.
Yeah, alright.
Perfect. This. Look at the description
I
here.
guess keep the top.
I think we're gonna use characters only from yours because this is like perfect.
Okay, what about items?
So he's like a brilliant inventor. Could actually. So he would make something anyway, and then he would screw with you.
What we have here is a vampire with a thunderhammer and a fairy. The fairy helps with his maneuverability. He's already really fast, but the fairy can get him, give him more avoidability. They don't know where he is all the time. She gets him past things that he might not normally spot. And if they ever wander into their side of the imaginary side of the park, they don't know where they are either. So they have a safe spot that they can retreat to. But that's not even going to become necessary. Because as the vampire moves through the park chasing after this goblin, he's not going to encounter a lot of traps because there's a lot of stuff that, if the goblin wouldn't subject himself to it, the vampire's probably not going to be there. Because he's strictly chasing after this goblin, he's avoiding anything. He's not going to just get distracted. He needs to eat. So anything that does come his way is not going to be major, and he can take it apart easily with the Thunderhammer, either by shorting it out, however temporarily, and overriding it that way, or blowing it to pieces that way, or literally just thwacking it apart, because it's a hammer and he has vampire strength.
Yeah.
Okay, now you want me to add anything?
If you
Yeah.
have anything to add.
Something very small, and we have established, now this is important if they go to the fairies part of the amusement park, and I don't think they will, but there's also something to be said for, yes, the fairy is a master of illusion, which first of all means that you don't just defeat the vampire, you have to defeat the fairy. And once you start going through that process, you will have to come to our side. Second of all, you have mentioned repeatedly that your electric sprite, the gremlin, is looking for problems and slight discrepancies with the way they've built things. So if the fairy puts an illusion of a discrepancy that's not actually there, that's not only going to distract the gremlin, but it's also going to cause him to potentially misengineer his own stuff.
And it could cover up discrepancies that are there. So you could smash something up, but it looks like it's still working. You see?
Alright, your turn. You had something.
Alright, so here's the main problem that the vampire and the fairy have. And I'm making the assumption that basically these two didn't even know each other before today. Okay? They've popped up and run into each other in some fashion. So they've seen each other at some point, and the thing about it is that the goblin and the gremlin will not go into the other area of the park. They don't have any compulsion to come after these two. They don't want to. They have no desire. They're basically a defensive side of the argument. They don't have any desire to make an attack on them, which would cause them to venture into an area where they're not familiar. So the reason why there's any battle is because the hungry vampire is going to come after this guy. He's going to see this little mischievous guy pop up somewhere and go, ooh, lunch, and go chasing after him, which is exactly what these guys like. Because if you go chasing them, which is the only way this battle happens, you end up in their side of the park. And before you even realize you need to use the Thunderhammer, you've been hit by the traps and things that have all been set up to attack you, and the person activating the traps never has to be seen. So basically, you go chasing this guy, and all of a sudden he drops away through a trapdoor, he goes into an area with a bunch of mirrors, and you can't keep track of him. Meanwhile, this guy comes in behind and activates something to kill you. And before you've even tried to use the Thunderhammer for anything, boom, you're hit.
also, just to add my 2 cents, just because I'm going to. I mean, while it is true that the fairy is going to use, like, I'm going to say the fairy, not only can she make her own park or whatever, but she can probably make the vampire seem like he's multiple vampires or something like that.
Well, she's got magic.
The thing is, there are 2 mysteries that they have no way of solving. Like, there's no way they can solve right away, and that's going to be distracting. The first mystery is, why is it that no matter how many times they hit these rides with the Thunderhammer, which is going to happen if they manage to survive that long, do the rides keep powering on? And second of all, there seems to be some unforeseen force that drives the rides. Like, even if they manage to get this guy killed somehow, there's some unseen force that's still continuing to power on the rides. They wouldn't even know what's attacking them in the first place. It's sort of like, oh, we've killed our enemy, but why are we still, you know what I mean? Why are we still being attacked?
Why are we subject to all this?
They don't have any way of seeing this guy coming, you know? I think the gremlin is what wins this for it. I mean, the goblin is the bait, definitely.
Right.
He's
but the
what
gremlin is the guy who can finish the fight.
The gremlin is absolutely, and he is the source of all the mystery in the park, and there's really, you've not given any reason why, any way that they could know about his existence, even with all their tricks, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they don't
Okay,
even
so
know
they can
he's
make
there.
tricks, they can make them, they have offensive tricks.
I think I'm ready to make a decision here.
Okay.
Yes.
Am I-
Please take all factors into consideration.
Yeah.
So we're still recording?
Yes. Because you got to have the judge.
All right.
Okay. Now, this, to recap a little bit, we started off with the carnival card.
Yeah.
What I did like about it, the story, is that the 2 characters on this side of the war, the gremlin and the goblin, did match the theme of the carnival. I thought that was very interesting. However, I thought that the other side of the fairy and the vampire did a pretty good job drawing in their own little world, and originally they had their own little carnival thing going on. It was almost a standoff between the 2 as to who would venture into where, but they did make the argument was made that the vampire would have to go into the goblin and gremlin side. So the fairy magic then didn't seem as particularly relevant. Now, once they went into that side, it was also declared that they were not interested in any of the traps that the goblin and the gremlin had set up around all the rides. So that was a very good counter with that as well. Now, when the Thunderhammer came out, which I thought was very clever, with the idea of destroying all the things that were set up, I thought that was very clever. And in fact, I had in my mind that what would happen is when he's working on all these contraptions with that electric hammer, that he would end up getting fried. So originally with that storyline, I was thinking this guy might actually be one that's dead. But when you brought out the fact that he is an electric sprite, I thought, there might be one dead, one alive. But the additional piece of the story that he was invisible and controlled all the electricity, now seemed to counter the electricity of the hammer, because he was basically the one in control of that. So I could see how he could protect his friend and control that, and that they were unaware of that. Now, I think if you'd actually used this fairy to detect the gremlin and the invisibility, which possibly could have had this power, that might have changed some things. But that didn't come out. So I'm going to end up ruling on the side of the goblin and gremlin, and mostly because of the visibility and the electric control over on this side. Okay.